everyone. It's Monday, July 10th, 2023, 4 o'clock. We're in the Carson City Community Center, Robert Bob Kroll Boardroom. We're at the Carson City Culture and Tourism Authority Board of Directors meeting. If I could get a roll call, please, Linda.
Yes, Mike Jones,
Here.
Bobby Rader,
Here.
Stacy Giomi. We have a quorum.
I could ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll move on to item 4, public comment. Seeing no public comment, we'll move on to item 5, approval of the minutes of the June 12th, 2023 CTA board meeting. Would any board member like any revisions or corrections to the minutes for the 12th meeting? If not, I can get a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
A second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We'll move on to the consent agenda now. Would any member of the public wish any individual item pulled for individual discussion? I don't think that'll happen, so I'll ask the board members if they would like any individual item pulled for individual discussion. Hearing none, if I can get a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda as it is.
Accept or approve?
Approve.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. This will move us on to item 9, monthly action items for presentation and discussion only. Chris, you're going to lead this off. We're really going to kind of finish off where we left off last meeting, I think, with Stu, but Chris, go ahead.
So under number 9, the monthly non-action items, there's no executive director's update. David's out, so we'll just skip on to the transient number B, letter B, transient occupancy tax versus forecasted. So the page you have in your packet is where Dave has predicted we're going to kind of end up with the year. We still had a few properties that were missing for April and May, and June won't be due until the end of July. So this is kind of where we're at there. And then, so now we're just going to move into the presentations from Stu for events and sales and Lydia from marketing and PR. These are the ones they were going to present last meeting and got cut short, so we're just going to have them represent those.
For the record, Stu Wexler. So we're just going to do a quick recap of where we started last month and then see if anyone has any questions. So I briefly talked about the IPW show, which was in June. Just some of the appointments real quick. There were 47. They had a few no-shows, which is typical. We did have some clients that I talked to that are actually looking to come to Carson City for the 2024 season. And so, yeah, that basically, if there's any questions on that. And then also, back in May, we did have the Battleborn Blades, which was held here at the community center inside the gym. They did have 50 fencers that participated in this. It's becoming pretty large and it's becoming more popular. They did have a Canadian fencer, and on their next one event that they want to do in September, it's actually an international European tournament that we'll see a lot of Europeans coming in for this the tournament. I actually did go there to watch it a little bit. It's pretty fascinating to see these people. As you can see some of the pictures, I mean, they are actually hitting, I mean, obviously trained with the equipment that they have. But I think if anyone gets a chance to go there, they should actually go and try and watch it. It's pretty fascinating, and I think it's becoming more and more popular in our area, in Carson City. We're starting to see a lot more interest in that.
This is our second one now, right?
This is actually a third one, yeah.
Is 50 fencers and 115 guests, are we growing or is that about the same?
It's growing from the very first one I went to, which is like when I first started here, there wasn't even that many participants when I first went to it. But now they're opening up, and they have a different type of tournament. It's more of a European tournament in September, which draws a lot of international interest.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? And so I'm going to give an update on the rugby. We were actually supposed to have that tournament this coming weekend, the 15th. We had to postpone it. We're now looking into the 2024 season. I did want to read a quick email that the coordinator sent me to David and I right before this. So he just said, Stuart and David, over the last 24 hours, he had 3 teams withdraw from the tournament, from the event with players, as they are being signed to play at the professional level and from teams from San Jose and New York City at the same time. So as you see, it's in like any farm league in baseball, football, hockey and all that, the farm leagues, their goal for these players is to become professional. So that's the chance and the risk they take when they do have a league like this that's non-professional. So when you have three teams withdraw because they didn't have the players, it's hard to do that, especially for our first one. So we're going to look at the 2024 season and keep trying to work with the rugby, because I'm seeing more interest as I've talked about it and talked to people about it. They are interested in rugby in this area, and there's actually a local team. They play up in Tahoe rugby, and obviously it's non-professional, but I've talked to them and they're interested in, getting something, some games going in Carson City as well. So yeah, no rugby, which would have been this coming weekend, but we are looking at 2024. Any questions on that?
Board Member Giomi?
I mean, what would prevent the exact same thing from happening next year? I
Well,
guess-
yeah, that is the situation, because their teams are always looking to go professional.
Yeah.
So we maybe have to curtail some of our expectations and the goal to maybe not have quite as big as a game to start with.
Yeah.
But this, according to the event coordinator, all happened at the last minute, where these teams were drafted by professional leagues, and they showed us a stadium. I mean, they're huge stadiums in New York that
Yeah.
they're going to be playing at.
No, I mean, I get that. I understand. I certainly don't fault them for that. I guess from our perspective, how much effort do we put into something that could happen exactly the same way again? I guess that's what I'm asking.
Right. Well, as we go into
Stu,
next year.
Sorry, Stu. Steve Kim, I was going to ask, could we do it earlier in the year before they're being selected?
We're talking about earlier in the year, but what we have to realize in our area, some of these rugby players do not like to play in our type of weather, because they've talked after
Going to be professionals. They got to deal with it.
What's that? Say that again.
I said if they want to be professionals, they got to deal with it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Once they get professional, they get paid for it. But we are looking into earlier than July. June and July is such a busy month for us. And then obviously this weekend, what they wanted to have it, we have the celebrity golf tournament going on.
Right.
So we have that overflow we see in the Carson City. So it's just a very busy weekend. So we're looking at different dates for that too.
First of all, Linda, will you let the record reflect that Board Member Kim has joined the meeting?
Yes, on the record, Steve Kim.
Okay. And is there, maybe we don't want to start with a full tournament. Is there an exhibition game or, even the women's game? Could we?
Right. Well,
maybe-
they talked about having 3 games for this coming weekend. There were going to be 3 men's and 1 women's game that they were looking to have. So obviously it was the men that went into the professional league, but they were looking at Vegas. The women's team was going to be from Vegas, and then one from Salt Lake City, which is another big area for rugby in that area. So I think going forward, I think maybe we do look at more of an exhibition game instead of just trying to start with this huge international game, for rugby. So, and rugby is still new in this area, so I think people have to become aware of it and really comprehend what rugby is. So,
All right. Thank you.
and then last month, I quickly mentioned Bike the Best, but everything happened so fast, I don't think. So at the IPW show, this last one and the first one I went to in Orlando, I worked with a group called Bike the Best. It's a German motorcycle group that comes over here this time of year, and they love going into the West. They go all over the Western states. Utah, Vegas, and they started in Vegas. So mid-June, they came into Carson City. They actually stayed in Carson City. They were going to stay in Reno, and I was able to get them to stay in Carson and spend a little bit more time here. There are only 4 people, 2 bikes, but they were just scouting the area because they're looking to bring a bigger group next year in 2024. They're looking at, maybe 13, 15 riders that would be coming into this area. And they had a great time here. They loved the area. Most of them are Harley bikes that they have, so they spent a little time at our Harley dealership. And then they were just looking at, bikes and talking to the dealership over there. Then they spent the night here, and then they took off to Tahoe, made a couple rounds, and they went back to Las Vegas to head home. But they love the area, they love Carson City, and they definitely want to bring a bigger biking group here next year. So we're working on that as well. And then we are gonna start working with the Bonanza Kennel Club. It's been around here for many, many years, and I've been working with Candy Roper, who's been running it. And just talking to her and some of the information that she has sent back to me via the American Kennel Club, which is huge, it's obviously national. They have been bringing a lot of out-of-town people in. They have put heads in beds for 2 or 3 days. So Candy and I got together, we're working on it, we're getting everything, paperwork, all that done, and so we're gonna be endorsing that this year, so. And I think that will be pretty well received in this area, so. Any questions on that? And that's it, that's the recap for last month.
For the record, Lydia Beck. All right, so we will just be recapping mostly May in this presentation. So we've got our PR report for May. I'll walk you through the fiscal year 24 media plan that's proposed, and then we have a recap of Datafy in Mark Twain Days. So for the PR report, we had a great May. We had 8 place stories, including a couple of big mentions. One was the HuffPost article for underrated capitals in the US. And we also had a mention in the Allegiant Airlines Nonstop Life magazine. So that will be in all West Coast flight seat pockets throughout the summer. And that was thanks to the PR efforts of the Reno Tahoe territory. And we had quite a few mentions in local publications for June events that we had. Obviously, June's a big visitor event month. And then in addition to those placements, we also have some exciting news that our PR road trip kit boxes took home an Excellence Award at the Silver Spike Awards. And our Nostalgia campaign won a coveted Silver Spike Award for overall campaign. So many kudos to KPS3 and our entire team because launching that campaign was a massive effort. So we're super proud to bring that home. Yes, yeah. And then the overall campaign took home the big one. So for the fiscal year 24 media plan, what you're seeing here is obviously a very fluid document. So this is kind of, the budget will obviously remain the same. We have some things that are committed already, but this obviously can change and flow throughout the year. So the things that you'll see different from last year is the addition of the Datafy media buy, which was thanks to a grant. And then I'll talk about that a little bit later and what that entails and why that's a little bit different than our typical media buy. We also incorporated a specific TikTok budget to work with, to boost those ads from the influencers we work with. We also are doing print ad editions in the Shakespeare Festival to help garner more interest in those people who are already at Tahoe, and also the Northley Tahoe Visitor Guide, which has a massive distribution to, I think, well over 100,000 people. And now we also have grant approvals for adding 2 Expedia co-ops, a new Priceline co-op that they've never done before, and a Travel Spike co-op. So all of those got approved. And so I'm excited to be launching those in our off seasons. And all of those are really targeting potential visitors at their time of booking. So Travel Spike, if you've never heard of them, is not a booking engine per se, but it is targeting specific travelers when they are booking on other websites. So it's not specific just to one website like Expedia and Priceline. And they are well known in the industry. And that new co-op is something that I'm excited to try that will incorporate more video as well. So we can utilize that nostalgia video campaign as well. We've also added in the cost for the content creators and for Glocally, which is the company that we work with to contract our influencers. Are there any questions I can answer for the media plan? All right. And on to our partnership with Datafy. I wanted to give you an overview of what the company does before I dive into what we found from Mark Twain Days. So this is a partnership that uses geolocation data to see a monthly analysis of where our visitors are going, how much they're spending, and how many are here, so it better informs our advertising and marketing decision making. So this data that we have goes back 4 years to present time. They also track vehicle data, which is a really interesting concept. So they can show where vehicles are moving in correlation to our identified points of interest and attractions in Carson City. And in addition, they use that data to show peak visitation times for any given date range. And what's even more helpful is that we can make specific ad buys, which is where that grant comes in, within the Datafy platform that utilizes specific audiences based off of the data that we're collecting from them. And now on that platform, we can actually track people who saw our ad and if they came to Carson City, which is really exciting. So we've submitted that grant and received it. And so we'll be doing some strategy work over the next couple of weeks to pick which avenues we're going to go, because they have multiple different options, whether it's display or video or native advertising or streaming TV or OTT, which we've done a lot in the past. So we're actually going to put that within the Datafy platform instead of contracting with our vendors that we have in the past, so we can track the people who viewed those videos and if they come into Carson City.
On this one, the retargeting and the lookalike, that's interesting lookalike audiences.
Yeah, we do that a lot with our social advertising as well. So as long as we have data for people that we know that come into Carson City, they'll actually be able to kind of profile what that visitor looks like and target people who look like that visitor that came to Carson City that maybe not had before. And so that's worked really well with us for our social ads as well. And then the retargeting is anyone that they'll be able to track our our website data to be able to retarget people as well if we do go that static display route and the video route, which is we're going to be definitely doing some video and connected TV for sure, and then we're going to be talking a lot more about some of the other options to see if it's worthwhile. Right. So for Mark Twain Days, let's see how this works. We have the data that presented is based off of visitors outside of a 50-mile plus radius because we really wanted to capture those who were really coming in overnight. So this doesn't really include the people who came from Reno. But we found that 24% of visitors came from outside the 50-mile radius, and they stayed an average of 1.3 days. And that weekend drove a 4.7% increase in visitation compared to the following weekend. So what you're seeing on this slide is our top feeder markets over Mark Twain Days weekend, broken down by the visitor radius of 30 and 50 miles. So you can see how that changes between, including Reno and not including Reno. So you can see that California was a really strong driver from Sacramento, LA, and San Francisco. And the last column, the third column on the right, breaks it down even farther, showing the destinations that visitors came from who had a correlation from being downtown and at any of our lodging properties at one time. So that really proves that correlation of the event actually driving room nights. So some pretty cool data that I can show. I can kind of let you dive through this, but this is just a comparison of a Mark Twain Days visitor demographic comparing to our locals in our immediate town. And then this is the vehicle data overview that I mentioned earlier. So this helps us isolate the road trippers, and this is all from 50 plus miles away. So this data is pulled from where the car lives, not where it's registered. So it's pretty accurate. It has to be, I believe, at least 10 years old or newer in order to gather that data. So the left is vehicles that came to downtown and actually parked, and at the right are those who came downtown and visited the lodging properties as well. And this is where you see the top markets change when you drop that radius down to 30 plus miles. So this is still the correlation between those that came to downtown and those that also went to lodging properties. So you'll see a lot more of Reno in there as well. Keep in mind, we did have a lot of sports tournaments that weekend too. So just keep in mind that most of this was likely correlated to Mark Twain Days, considering it was all concentrated to the downtown area, but there's no way for us to pull out people who also visited to come eat or spent other time downtown as well. So I think that's why we're seeing more of that local radius when you get that down to 30 plus miles, when the correlation with the lodging. So overall, we found that in the month of April, the vehicle visitation from 50 plus miles was highest to all the clusters that we have mapped out in the system during the event weekend. So there were more vehicles in the downtown and on lodging on this weekend than spring break weekends. In April, we also saw the highest correlation of vehicles visiting downtown to also the lodging clusters during Mark Twain Days. And we saw the highest monthly vehicle visitation to downtown from San Francisco DMA, Portland, LA, Salt Lake, and Las Vegas DMAs during the weekend of Mark Twain Days. And this is where you're going to see that heat map of the visitation times that the vehicle data can show us. So we can see that it's pretty saturated on the weekends in the summer. While April does receive drive market visitation, it definitely has room for increased opportunity to convert visitors to overnight stays for 2 or 3 nights. This slide is showing peak visitation to downtown during Mark Twain Days specifically of cars that were of origin from 50 plus miles away. So we can see that it was strongest, especially on Saturday, especially from 1 to 2 p.m. But we also had strong numbers around breakfast and dinner, as well as on Sunday around lunch and when we had the picnic event that was going on. So overall, Datafy is providing some pretty incredible modeled data. So this isn't specific tracking a cell phone that came into market. It's giving us modeled data based off of some of that geolocation that we're getting. So these are solid predictions, and they have multiple different models that they use, and the accuracy is pretty spot on from what they found with other partners, and how they really do this in a very proprietary way. So it's really helping us invest our dollars and making our decisions wisely based off of this information. So we hope obviously you can see that value too. And if there's any questions I can answer, I'm happy to do so.
No, this is the first time we've used Datify, right?
Correct. We launched in January, but it does take about 3 months to really build everything out. So Mark Twain Days was really the first event that we can do. We're trying to pull some Datify numbers on pay dirt if we have enough people that came into market. So we'll be starting to kind of use this to model after all the events, and we've extended this contract through the end of the fiscal year as well, of fiscal year 24. So if there's any data that you're interested in that we think we can apply, I would love to know. My next presentation in August will do a recap of fiscal year 23 using some of this data. If there's anything that I can pull, even not in Datify, that you'd like for me to present, please let me know. I'd be happy to do so.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from the board for Lydia?
I just want to say congrats on the awards. That's really cool.
Thanks. Thank you. We were excited to get that. We've submitted for a couple of others coming up, so we'll cross our fingers and hopefully have some others to bring home. All right. Thank you.
So the next agenda item is future agenda items. If you guys have any items you want us to put on next month's agenda? No? Okay. The next upcoming meeting will be Monday, August 14th, 2023 at 4 p.m.
Thank you, Chris. That takes us to item 10, board comments or announcements, requests for information. Any announcements or requests?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that at our last board meeting, we approved the Cultural Commission's recommendations for art events in the community. So it's $25,000 worth of awards to a number of businesses. I didn't bring that packet with me, but a lot of the same groups we've done before. Our focus is on newer events, so there's a couple of older organizations that are doing newer events. So, you know, they're in the $4,000 to $5,000 range for those. And as you said, I don't know if you mentioned it actually during the open meeting, but we should have interviews for the vacant position at our next board meeting on July 20th. So that's the plan.
Yes, I'd like to let everybody know that the exhibit that we put together in partnership with Visit Carson City, Nevada State Museum, Nevada Indian Commission, our museum, and Great Basin Native Artist Collective that we showed at the airport last year in Reno. We are putting a version of that exhibit together at the Truckee Parks and Rec Center in Truckee, California. So that'll be showing from July 13th through October 20th.
Sorry, public comment? I don't think we have any, so we'll move on to our last item, and that's 12 to adjourn, if I can get a motion.
Make a motion to adjourn.
We're adjourned.